Coming up.
To the one I brought up a few times on this committee, and it was the research dollars that were given to study Dolly-Parton's lyrics. And I'm sure that there's other ones like that out there, maybe not Dolly-Parton's lyrics, but ones that everyday Canadians would wonder why the heck the government is spending money on that.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
My first question is to the University of Lethbridge, Ms. McMartin. Do you think that if we were to kind of go about what you had mentioned, do you think we should go through all the different grants that are provided and look at the results that we're getting first, and then move forward in contemplating maybe leveling the playing field? Make sure we're getting value for our dollars and all the research money invested in the universities?
That's a great question. I think that the tri-agencies and CFI and other federal funding agencies do an exceptionally good job of collecting that kind of data, and the universities ourselves are held accountable both by the federal government and our provincial funders to ensure that we're making best use of the research funds we receive, that we're impacting communities, that we're influencing policy, that we're generating economic activity, creating talent for the future of Canada. And so I do think that we have a very efficient system in terms of the return on investment for research funding across the country. There is always room for improvement, of course, and I think that our current review processes, while extraordinarily robust and certainly internationally recognized and renowned, could still use some improvement in terms of determining where and how those funds are allocated.
Yeah, I always go back to the one I brought up a few times on this committee, and it was the research dollars that were given to study Dolly-Parton's lyrics. And I'm sure that there's other ones like that out there, maybe not Dolly-Parton's lyrics, but ones that everyday Canadians would wonder why the heck the government is spending money on that. The question I would have for Ms. Aiken at Dalhousie University, and it's the one I think probably the smaller mid-sized universities get frustrated with, is the fact that they're kind of led to believe, or it's kind of put on them, that they don't have the basis, they don't have the staff, they don't have the infrastructure to do the research projects, to quote unquote play with the big guys. But I always go back to the University of Guelph, and I just can't believe there's another university in Canada that does as much top quality agricultural research as the University of Guelph, and yet they're not in the U15 area. They're not in that gang. So what do we do to level this playing field? Because it doesn't seem right that Guelph would not be considered one of the top research universities, or at least be eligible for doing important ag research.
Yeah, well, I think what you would find is Guelph probably does receive the bulk of agricultural research funding. I mean, right up there with Alberta and Saskatchewan in terms of funding dollars for agricultural research. The U15 group, my understanding, it predates me as a university executive, but it was formed in 2012. In order to bring views of common interest across research-intensive universities to the government. And, I would think we would all recognize that there are many research-intensive universities that aren't necessarily part of the U15. I mean, we see Sherbrooke, we see Guelph, we see Concordia, Memorial, we see lots of universities in that category. So they are all research-intensive universities as well, I would say, based on their infrastructure. But at some point, and I think my colleague Dina mentioned this very well, sometimes it's a size issue. So as we're the smallest of the U15 universities, and certainly some of the non-U15 student body-wise are even a bit bigger than us. So the research intensivity, I think, deals with how you prioritize within the university, within your operating budget. And I do think sometimes the smaller universities don't have the capacity to apply for really large scale grants. And I'll give you an example. We're all looking at Horizon Europe, and Dalhousie wouldn't consider leading a Horizon Europe application. We'll partner, but we also don't have the size or the infrastructure to lead that. We might see U of T or UBC do something like that, but we wouldn't see another university in Canada have the capacity to do that.
Agricultural.
I can't hear you, sir.
Dalhousie, they receive agricultural research grant dollars?
We do. Yes, we
Okay.
do. We have a faculty of agriculture.
I thought I saw that. So how do they determine then what Dalhousie should do versus what Guelph should do when you're saying before that Guelph receives the bulk of the agriculture research?
Well, so the vast majority of Guelph's agriculture research money comes from the Ontario government. But I would say also within the tri-agencies, looking at the various tri-agencies, Guelph still receives high levels of agricultural funding, more than we would receive, certainly. A lot of agricultural research, though, is funded through industry partnerships and in industry organizations, the dairy farmers, wheat board. They're a lot of the funders of agricultural research and certainly are supportive of work at all of the institutions. But, Guelph's a standout in agriculture. There's no question about it. That I don't think anyone would question that.
Okay,
Thank you so much. And as the member from Guelph, I appreciate the conversation around my hometown.
To our witnesses for being here today. I've got a series of questions for both universities. Regarding the research of your respective universities carry out, do you track how much of it has been commercialized?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
How has that been tracking? As in, has it been trending up, flat, or down?
Ours has been trending up, for sure.
Ours is,
In terms of number of patents, number of startups that we've grown and supported, IP.
Yeah, and similarly here, we're seeing a significant growth in commercialization, startups, subsidiaries, and a lot of particularly graduate student enterprise being grown out of the university. We provide an incubator space for them on campus with the support of external agencies and partners, and sort of give them a couple of years of support, and then slowly move them into a more market appropriate cost structure.
Yeah,
To do with
we do the same.
The commercialization aspect of it, is this, I'm assuming this is another revenue source, and in general, have you guys been moving away and diversifying yourself away from government for some of the funding that's taking place in your campuses?
So we are one of the national, currently on the first stage of Lab to Market. We're one of the partnered national leads with Toronto Metropolitan and Concordia, though we have lots of good partners across the country, 33 to be exact. And we have found that some other sources of funding have helped our graduate students to commercialize, but we've also found that the business community are very generous with their time to help our graduate students learn about business development and growth of a business. So we also are one of the hubs of the Creative Destruction Lab. So we move right through all areas of commercialization. But I will also note, we have a wholly inventor-owned IP policy. We don't retain any of the IP that our people generate.
And the University of Lethbridge is the same. We don't retain the IP, and so our goal is to ensure that we've actually reduced the barriers to get information, get technologies, get new ideas, innovations out into the entrepreneurial landscape rather than attempting to sort of keep it inside the ivory tower. And so that means that, we're not replacing different revenue streams. In fact, we're encouraging revenue generation in our community rather than within our institution.
Exactly.
just speaking about the communities and life on campus, can you discuss the impact of the out-of-control cost of living crisis that is happening on your students and the research in respective universities?
I can go first. Alice has been good about going first on several other occasions. Given the affordability crisis, I would say there's actually an opportunity to really support the regional and smaller institutions. We don't have the same housing availability issues or affordability challenges that you might find in some of the larger centers, at least not yet. It is expensive to live. Inflation is high. It's been coming down, trending down for the last little while, which has been extraordinarily helpful. But it's a really, any of those questions is a confluence of issues. There's not one single challenge that goes into affordability. And so it's access to adequate federal, provincial, municipal funding. It's ensuring that students do have access to the bursaries, the scholarships, and the food security that they need. And I think food security on campuses right now is a particularly challenging issue for all of us to keep in front of our top of mind.
Shout out to Dalhousie in a second, but just on that food insecurity, have you heard students having to use the food bank?
Very much so. And in fact, we have expanded our food bank on campus, as well as having fresh food days, nutrition days, and there's a significant amount of effort going on.
I'm sorry,
on
I
our
just
campus.
missed that. And this is one of the first that I've heard. You have an actual food bank on campus?
We do, yes. And I think, in fact, most universities do these days.
That's unfortunate in a country as wealthy as a G7 country that we have students not just accessing food bank, but seemingly the system is set up that there's free food on campus.
Okay.